Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Christopher Ray Patton. Name your favorite movie star, kids, your favorite leading man, the one that you think about all the time, the one that gets all the press, all the praise, the one that the ladies tend to fawn over, the one that the men truly want to be like. Like, go throughout, I'm not going to go through the history of time. I don't have that kind of time. Do you? But like, if we're talking about today, maybe you'd say The Rock, maybe you'd say Matthew McConaughey, maybe you'd say Brad Pitt, maybe you'd say Marky Mark, maybe you'd say George Clooney. Who knows? Whoever your favorites are out there, whoever at the time, Bradley Cooper, sexiest man alive, and all that hoo-ha stuff. You know, again, just a good-looking dude, but he's got the chops, charisma, personality for days. You know what's funny? Is that everything I just said perfectly describes one guy without even having to say his name, and that is Burt Reynolds. If you are Gen X, and man, do I hate categorizing people by the generation they grew up in because it's lame, and here I just went and did it. But if you're one of Gen X like I am, and you're born in a certain era, then you probably grew up as a kid with Burt Reynolds on your TV or in the movie theater on the magazine covers being talked about on these shows. And then later on, you find out just the kind of impact he had during his time in Hollywood. And again, man, talk about a leading man, talk about a guy that it just seemed to be like he just wasn't trying very hard. And that's not an insult toward him at all. It's actually a huge compliment. We've talked about Burt Reynolds here before on the show with Smokey and the Bandit review. And today we're going to talk about Gator. Now, if you poll the average folk just kind of walking around, chances are they may have heard of Smokey and the Bandit. They may not have heard of Gator. Again, unless they are Gen X. And sorry once again for, typing. I hate that. I don't want to be that guy. But again, if you're a 70s kid growing up in that era into the 80s, then you know who Burt Reynolds is, then you know what Gator is. And we're going to talk about it today. So let's do this. Gator is a 1976 American action comedy film and a sequel to White Lightning, starring and directed by Burt Reynolds himself in his directorial debut. The film is primarily set in Georgia. In the film, an ex-convict is blackmailed into working for a federal agent. He is tasked with investigating the operations of a local crime boss who used to be the ex-convict's friend. The ex-con is disgusted when he finds out that his former buddy is profiting from child prostitution, motivating him to destroy his buddy's criminal empire. As we said, directed by Burt Reynolds, written by William W. Norton, produced by Jules Levy and Arthur Gardner, starring Burt Reynolds and some other folks that I cannot wait to talk about here today, especially the heavy. This movie distributed by United Artists. Release date May 8th, 1976 in Savannah, Georgia, and July 28th, 1976, nationwide release. Total running time 115 minutes. The budget for this film, depending on where you look, we've narrowed it down to anywhere from $1 million to 1.5 to 2 million bucks at that time. But the box office for this movie, 11 million bucks. And that is the lowdown for Gator. So, Chris, welcome back to the show. Number one, you and I did Smokey and the Bandit. You're a Burt Reynolds guy, as am I. I can't wait to kind of gush over how great he is in this, because I swear to God, it doesn't look like he's trying very hard. And that, again, that's a compliment. That's not to say he didn't try to act and didn't, study his craft. But man, I think I'd kind of forgotten. And it's easy to forget, Chris, what a natural this guy was. What do you think about Gator overall, man? Have you seen this movie more than I have, I'm sure?
Yeah, this kind of came after us talking through Smokey and the Bandit and what we'd want to do in the future and our love of Burt Reynolds. I am a millennial, by the way, who still somehow grew up on this movie. Growing up in Georgia, as I've talked about in the past, you get great flicks on TBS back in the day, such as Gator, So I don't know that I saw the uncensored version of this until I was in like middle school or something. I think I have the DVD collection of White Lightning and Gator still downstairs. For anyone who wants to go check this out, it is free. You can go check that out on Tubi and a couple of different other streaming platforms, obviously with commercials, but it is a great watch.
It's on Pluto TV. That's where I watched it.
So the one thing I will say about this is the more fun of the two films. So you don't necessarily have to watch these in order. White Lightning is more gritty and it may not be everyone's cup of tea. This movie is just a lot of fun.
In an era where we weren't exactly getting sequels, Chris, does this predate Godfather? Is it around the same time as like Godfather 2, I wonder?
This came out in 76, so we would have to look up when Godfather 2 came out.
And for some reason, for older movies, I always go directly to Godfather 2 as being like, they didn't used to do sequels then, but I know about Godfather 2. And that's probably not fair because I'm sure characters appeared in one film to the next without it being called, White Lightning Part 2, Gator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you go into like Westerns, right? There were sequels in Westerns. But yeah, that came, Godfather 2 came out in 74. So that would have been 2 years before this.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the thing about this film is you don't need to know anything about White Lightning at all. Other than the name of Gator McCluskey, there's not much carryover. Why he is in, why the movie starts out the way it does has nothing to do with White Lightning or the plot line of White Lightning.
Wow.
It's more of just building. I guess he just really liked the name Gator McCluskey. We'll go with that. But there's not much in common between the two films other than Burt Reynolds.
And look, just fair warning, kids. This thing was made in 76. There's some offensive stuff here, but I will preface that with this, Chris. Yes, there's some offensive stuff here, but the character that needs to be offended is highly offended. Like, this guy Gator does not go for any of this nonsense. You could argue that, is he a man's man when it comes to women? Sure. But dude, the stuff he needs to be outraged about, like, you can tell he's not racist. You can tell he's not down with what the other character does later in the movie. At least there's that, Chris, where he's not like, going along with anything. He's the good guy because that's what he's supposed to be.
Yeah, he is very much your white meat baby face in this film, for sure. Yes, that is a good alert. The kind of the setup to this film, as you gave in the rundown of the plot, is how awful the big bad is in this film as a person.
Terrible. And I didn't realize until that scene got there just how much that scene was going to become the driving force of the entire movie moving forward. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really took over the plot at that point.
Well, yeah, everything up to there is all wink and nod, kind of funny. You even get some, let's say, Smokey and the Bandit Dukes of Hazzard aspects with Burt and Gator's character and the cops. I mean, it does not set you up for what this criminal's criminal activity is, realistically, until that moment happens, and everything goes downhill from there.
And honestly, like, I was gushing quite a bit about Burt here, dude. What is it about this guy? Is it? Can you define it? Is it just that that's the way he was natured? That was just his style? Because man, he appears, and I say McConaughey. I don't know if that's the closest comparison I have. Probably it's not fair, but for a guy like, they yell action, and he's just fine. He's calm. He's chill. Like, that's just kind of what he does throughout this whole movie and other films he's done at that time too.
That's kind of like a little bit of the acting style of that time. If you think about your Clint Eastwoods, your Steve McQueen's, your Paul Newman's, that was more of your leading man, which we see more in like a Matthew McConaughey now than you see in a lot of other actors. More about the look and natural charisma and just more being yourself than actively trying to play a character. Not that Burt never did that throughout his career, but there's something to be said about that. Now, he also directed this film. So
That's fair. Well, that's fair. True.
you could kind of make yourself look as good as you want to if you're also the director, one would think, unless it's something like The Room or
If you're the head booker and the main star, yeah, you're doing pretty well for yourself. Yeah.
But that character, this would have been after Deliverance, so he had started taking, White Lightning is more serious. It's more similar to how he acts in Deliverance, whereas this film is kind of leading you to what would eventually become the Bandit. But you get a good little mix of that in this film. But yeah, some of that's the acting style. I know that we talked about it on the Smokey and the Bandit. Like his one of his biggest influences was Marlon Brando. And there's, if you watch early Brando, it's kind of the same thing. Now, Brando would later go on to do crazy, crazy amounts of acting and changing completely through method acting and all of that. But if you watch, some of the earlier flicks,
yeah, that's true. Vibe. Dude, you're right. He did change with the method acting. And honestly, you could kind of argue it gave him a whole other career during his later years too.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story of The Godfather, right? Hollywood was pretty much done with him up until that point.
Good call. Yeah. Well, look, we've been talking about the heavy, and I don't want to get to him. I want to get to him, but I don't want to bypass Burt too awful much. In an era when men were men and all that crap, and I'm not going to go digging through this guy's history to find dirt. I'm sure there's stuff. And I think the divorce with Lonnie Anderson, I don't think was very awesome. But again, the details escape me, and I'm not trying to bury anybody or lift anybody up too much if they don't deserve it. But I do think it's kind of cool that, history kind of smiles pretty favorably on this guy, because in interviews and whatnot, God, he just seemed like a regular dude. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe he was a jerk. I never knew the guy, but it just felt like he just kind of showed up to do his thing. He seemed personable. And by the way, I don't know if you ever got into My Name is Earl. When he had guest spots on My Name is Earl, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. So the thing about that show that drives me insane is the way they just canceled it.
Oh, completely ruined it. Yeah, for sure.
But I love that show, and his guest spots were fun. And his later comedy stuff that he was doing in the 2000s was also pretty entertaining. I obviously can pull up his IMDb and think of some examples, but he would end up playing kind of like goofy bad guy characters.
Striptease put him back on the map, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of those flicks.
The Longest Yard, right? For sure. Which was a remake of his original Longest Yard. He was very good in that.
I've never seen the original. I think we talked about that last time. It's still on my list of things to see. I have obviously seen the Adam Sandler one with the great actor Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Of course.
This
is how a white man plays guitar,
But I have not seen the original.
Yeah, again, it's one of those, because I grew up watching this stuff, and it would get on TV on the Saturday afternoon movie or whatever they called it. So it was he was a presence on my TV and in my life as a kid. I can't deny it. My mom was a big fan. Ladies out there, if you don't know about Burt Reynolds, go look up this guy in his prime. Ladies loved this guy, man. He was a hit for sure.
Yeah, and even for music fans out there, there's great stories about his relationships with Tammy Wynette and the great breakup of Tammy Wynette and George Jones. So
there you go. Ladies man for sure.
Sally Fields, Tammy Wynette, you named one earlier. Kind of one of the original Hollywood. I'm gonna date all of the other Hollywood stars to some extent.
Yeah.
Him and Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, legend. Another legend. You know what I mean? Yeah. Got to do Butch and Sundance on the 6M sometime. I freaking love that movie.
So I would love to do that one with you, because I don't think I've ever seen that film all the way through.
So good.
So.
It's so good. There was something, I'll never remember now, but there was something I was watching the other day that absolutely took cues from Butch and Sundance. Because it was the when the guys were chasing them through the desert. It's who are these guys? They just kept using that one line through the whole movie. Because they did everything they could to get away from it. It's like they'd be up on the rocks or something, and they could see this posse figure out where they'd really gone. Now, they're like, man, who are these guys? So they're so chill when they're talking about it. Like, they're coming to kill you. You have to know that. You know what I mean?
They kind of do an homage to that in one of the Top Gear specials a long time ago, where they're doing a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid thing, and the who are these guys are the producers with the backup car.
Ah, that's nice.
But they keep playing into it like that as well.
That's so good. Yeah. Well, look, I love movies of this era because it was a different time, and I'm not, of course, saying I enjoy stuff that doesn't age well. I don't care to hear the N-word said at any time or for different minorities to be frowned on or whatever. Of course, I'm not here for that. Of course, I'm not here for a woman getting smacked around and stuff. That none of that stuff should have ever happened to begin with. And I'm not going to sit here and make the blanket excuse of it was a different time, because everybody says that. It shouldn't have happened to begin with. But all we're doing, folks, is taking one film at a time, as we always do on this show, and giving you our opinions on it. That's all we're going to do here today. So,
yeah, it's also one of those things where it was happening in real life.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a thing to keep in mind. When people look back at these things, it's while it's uncomfortable to watch, it is relevant because that stuff happened in the 1970s.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, yeah. And you'd like to think that we've gotten past all that, but recent events in this country have suggested we've not moved past it. And we won't date this thing too awful much, but let me tell you, it's been a tough week. So buckle up, kids, on that one is all I can say. Well, look, I don't want to slow dance around the heavy anymore, because the heavy is one of my favorite people, not actor, musician, whatever, delivers the mail. I don't care what he did. One of my favorite people in the history of forever is Jerry freaking Reed. And I know the same is true for you. This guy is the villain here. And like, Chris, it's real hard to hate this guy until the thing happens. And you're like, oh my, I don't think I like him anymore. Dude, is it safe to say, maybe it's hard to say in the year that we're doing this compared to 76, because I don't know the answer. Is it safe to assume that maybe he was underestimated, undervalued, underappreciated as an actor? Do you think he got his flowers? I really don't know how history views him at this point.
It's very tough to say, because I think a lot of people just see him as the coach from The Waterboy or Snowman. That's a tough thing to say, but he is phenomenal in this film. So as good. Far as like you said, being this kind of lovable guy until the film escalates. But yes, as just a villain, you can see how this guy would get people to buy into his criminal activity, and the way he puts it down with his natural charisma. And Jerry Reed, one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and absolutely love Jerry Reed in this film. He plays it with such natural charisma, and it's almost effortless in the way, if you listen to his music, it's like that as well. His guitar playing and in the way he formulates songs. For instance, like She Got the Gold Mine, I Got the Shaft. Yes, his personality, it plays into that. And there's something to be said about both of these, both your good guy and your main baddie in this film, is they just bleed like everyday person. Your everyday man, someone that you kind of know or maybe knew in high school, that just has that natural charisma. Sure. And it's kind of funny because they play off each other as being former best friends, in a sense. And that Jerry Reed's just so surprising, because I think this is the first thing he was ever in, as well as an actor. And we're still not sure how that relationship between him and Burt Reynolds got started. I want more details on that.
God, they just seem to be best friends at any given time. Maybe they weren't, but man, they sure seem to be. We're talking about charisma and how these guys it's like they yell action and they're just immediately in character and they're ad-libbing. It feels like they're always ad-libbing. It feels like they're always just in their element, no matter what they're doing together. And separately, I would say also, like, I got to tell you, man, I mentioned Clooney and Pitt earlier. Like, they've got a flick that came out recently where they're both like cleanup guys after something's gone wrong, and they both get called into like the same crime scene on the same night. And I'm struggling for the title of it. It's fantastic. I kind of feel like, Chris, that's where the appeal of those two guys working together. You just don't feel like they're, I don't know, they just feel like normal guys. Even when it's a stylish flick like Ocean's 11 or something, it still just feels like they just kind of walked on the set and just started going.
Yeah, I agree. So doing a little bit of research here on the fly, it seems like Jerry Reed and Burt Reynolds met each other in Nashville and just became really good friends.
Awesome.
So that's how he got casted here. But this was his first film. So,
and he came out the gate doing this. Like, what a great character. I mean, a terrible character, but what a great performance for a terrible character.
yeah, you decide you're going to step away from the music career as the fun-loving, guitar-picking man himself to go on to be a complete scumbag in your first on-screen appearance. It's kind of that takes some balls there.
Full heel turn for this guy, man.
But yeah, apparently he, Elvis famously covered Guitar Man, which is a Jerry Reed song. Jerry Reed worked on a ton of people in Nashville, that's how that, I guess, Hollywood friend connection started.
That's awesome. Yeah. And like, we view Elvis as being this icon, this legend and stuff. But dude, Chris, at one time he was just kind of walking around, and like to guys like Jerry Reed and people in the biz, oh, it's Elvis. Okay, cool. But like, he gets that icon status years later, like, oh my God, Elvis. I would guess it's the same way with Jordan or anybody that sort of, transcended their generation. At the time, people around him was like, yeah, it's Jordan. It's fine. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like that's where it was because to your point, Reed was talented in his own right, man. Maybe not an Elvis per se, but multi-talented as well.
Yeah, kind of a completely different. Jerry Reed's almost like a folk country type thing. So listening to his music is really weird in general, but very different than like your typical country music of the 1970s, I would say, for the most part. As you can tell with songs like Eastbound and Down and She Got the Gold Mine, I Got the Shaft.
Yeah.
Or Amos Moses was a Cajun for all you Grand Theft Auto San Andreas fans out there.
I love that song, by the way, Amos Moses. I always thought that would have been a good song for Dusty to come out to. I have no idea why. It just seemed like sort of that rambling, had that vibe that Dusty would come out to. But yeah.
All of the song. Wyatt family. Just come out to Amos Moses.
That'd be okay. Hey, why not?
That's that would have been if they had a face turn. It would.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No, so we gotta go ahead and put the name out there though, because it's one of the greatest bad guy names. Bama McCall.
Great name.
We got Gator McCluskey and Bama McCall.
I could have done without McCluskey. I kind of felt that's a little clumsy to me. It's a little awkward, I think, but maybe that's the point.
Yeah, you get to meet his family, right? So
yeah, that's fair. Unfortunately, kids, for us, we have lost both these gentlemen, unfortunately. And Lauren Hutton is the love interest. She's 80 years old now. She is still with us, unlike the other two fellows we were just talking about. A very young Lauren Hutton in this movie. So she was 23 when this movie came out. I think that's right. 23 years old. Yep. Man. So all due respect to Miss Hutton, she's no Sally Field. That's like diminishing this lady's career, which is insane. I don't mean it like that. But I don't know that I saw the dynamic between him and her that I saw with him and Field. And also, Chris, is that even fair to try to compare those two things?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Sally Fields is a better actress, so it's kind of a bit of a tough comparison to begin with. In someone who had already done several films before Smokey and the Bandit, right? Whereas Lauren Hutton, I'm not sure that she had done a ton before Gator here. I see some TV made for TV flicks and a few things like that. But it's kind of a hard. The movie itself also doesn't really gear towards their romance that much.
True.
So it's whereas the way that Burt Reynolds and Sally Fields, who had a real relationship and outside of that film, interact with each other, it comes off a little more natural.
Mm. Yeah, that's fair. The movie the year before this came out was The Gambler, and it's not that Gambler. It's a 74 film starring James Caan. I know I've never seen that movie before. Interesting.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one. I didn't know that Lauren Hutton had a sit down interview guest show in the 90s from like 95 to 97. There's like 150 episodes of this.
That is completely. I bet if I saw clips, it would strike a chord. But right now, I have no memory of that either.
I mean, there's some crazy guests on this list, like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Peter Fonda, LL Cool J, RuPaul, Debbie Harry. It's kind of. I'm gonna have to go see if I could find some of these episodes just to see what that talk show was like.
Well, having said that, I do think she's good here. I didn't see anything that wasn't working. Again, I don't think she had the connectivity with Reynolds that Sally Field had, but again, that's a tough one. But I thought she was fine. I thought the ending with her story was, we always want the good guy to get the girl in the end, and he didn't get the girl in the end. Spoiler alert. I didn't see that coming. It kind of felt like, he saved the day, he saved her life. Yeah, I'm going to go take a job in New York. I'm out. They didn't even say anything like, well, let's stay in touch. Right?
No, Gator had to get back to the Okefenokee and fix the docks he ran through on his boat in the first scene.
Yeah. You know what would have been awesome, because he's like, I'd like you to meet my daughter sometime. And she goes, I'd like to meet her someday. Right. And I'm thinking, when he goes back to his car, wouldn't it have been awesome if she had been in the back seat laying down asleep? Like he had thought that much of this woman. He had brought his kid with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd have been pretty cool.
I mean, I'm just saying, he's a big softy. He's a man's man, Chris, but he's a big softy too.
There's also no evidence that Gator is not the bandit. Think about that. Crossover. Bandit is actually Smokey and the Bandit's actually a sequel to. No, I'm kidding, but
I mean, I don't know. Like his best friend Snowman looks suspiciously like the guy that used to be his best friend that he had to kill. By the way, did he kill Bama with that? It was like was it a dumpster lid that he brought down his head? What was that?
When they get to fighting in the Surf Shack, vending, or I guess it's like a concession stand, it gets a little crazy. So I'm not 100% sure, but yes, it does seem like he kills him with a trash can lid.
Man, brother, let me tell you, he's a classic villain, because as soon as that gun was out of his hands, he took off running like crazy.
He really did.
I'm out, boy. I can't do this. Oh, his style, by the way, can we give Jerry Reed a massive shout out? No one walking the planet looks like this anymore, and that's a shame. Like, I don't know. I don't mean to keep putting over McConaughey like he just happened. Dude's been working for like 35 years or some number now, but like, I don't know. I think during the Smoking the Band episode, I think I made that comparison really, really heavy too.
Yeah.
Like style and sound and tenor and tone and swagger,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny or not see that comparison with the accent and kind of the cool portrayal of how they play their characters off. I will say that Jerry Reed's character is a bit more of a live wire than most of McConaughey's characters in films, but
that's fair.
There's he does have his bodyguard here, Bones, William Angusser, I want to say.
Angusser? Yeah, I think so.
Who really only played, as far as I can tell, monsters in flicks before this movie. So he was like a Bigfoot character. He was a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of just got casted for being as big as he was. He's 7'3", and looking at some information here on the web about him. Apparently, when he was playing basketball in high school, he was linked with Wilt Chamberlain just
Mm-hmm.
because of his height, which is interesting.
Yeah, isn't that something? They've still got his records online of when he played Southern California. Yeah, he was the drafted to the Knicks, 14th round, first pick, 105th overall in 1961. His career games, 4 games, 2 points average, field goal percentage 50%. He didn't have quite a stellar career in the NBA there.
No, but he'll live on forever in Gator way more than he would have as an NBA superstar, right?
For sure. What did you think about his head coming through the top of that Cadillac or the top of that car, man?
It's I just have to assume that Burt Reynolds loved that as a gag because they
Yeah.
kind of do a little bit of that in Smokey and the Bandit when the top of the car comes off and he makes
That's
the
right.
son hold the hat the entire time.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny to me why they didn't just do a Cadillac. I guess that was they wanted to do the bit of he's just that tall. That is very funny. And by the way, the name Bones doesn't fit. I do like when it's like, do you know why they call me Bones? Because I told them to.
I guess
It's a good
that was
line.
I guess that was the joke, right? Maybe we just weren't in on the joke.
Maybe so. It's a good line. Yeah.
Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com.
By the way, circling back to Hutton, I think she's believable. She is Aggie Maybank. These names, for God's sake. Aggie Maybank. Yeah, she's a reporter, and Jerry Reed kind of, disses her because that's what the Bama does, Chris. Bama be dissing women. I don't know. Like, he got no time to be nice. That ain't happening.
Yeah, he doesn't have time to be nice. He's got poker games to get to, liquor to move, and ladies to prostitute out.
Yes, because the troubling thing that we talked about that we mentioned in the intro, the troubling bit of this movie, he's pimping out a house full of ladies who are possibly underage, possibly very underage, like, barely high school age. It's a problem. And, not making light of anything, but like, again, Chris, this movie took a turn, to me, a noticeable turn in tone and in every other way possible when not only was he trying to hook Gator up with this girl who he told him up front was 15, but she was already on drugs and he got her hooked.
Yeah, so that is how he gets his ladies to work for them. From what I recall, is he is getting them hooked on opium. So all of this is kind of taking place in an opium den the first time that Bama and Gator meet back up for the first time in years and years and years, which I guess we should kind of go back to the beginning. But so Gator gets out of prison because he was a moonshiner bootlegger. If you watch White Lightning, that's kind of the story there. There's obviously more to White Lightning than just that. It's written by the same guy, William W. Norton. He also wrote White Lightning. So some of that grittiness carries over, and I think this is where you see it the most in the entire film, is the setup of the bad guy. But yeah, so you get FBI agents. They basically are threatening to put Gator's sister in foster care and his father in prison if Gator doesn't try to get them information on Bama McCall, who is a drug dealer and pimp, basically. But Bama's whole game here is that he has an opium den. He convinces children, essentially, or middle schooler, high schooler age girls to get hooked on opium. And then the only way to pay off their debt is to work in this opium den doing nefarious things.
That's a great, very mild way to put it. That's well done.
He is a complete scumbag.
He is.
So all of the love that you have for Bama McCall when he first meets up with Gator, and they're like, well, you old so-and-so, with all the Southern charm and them going back and forth, it goes right out the window very quickly, as you noted.
Oh, man. Yeah, it takes a turn. It doesn't take long. It's actually 46 minutes into the film, which leaves an hour and 10 and some change for the rest of the movie. So you find out fairly soon this guy's, really bad shape. Actually, I could, I've got the time a bit. All right, time's a bit off. So it's around 46-minute mark that you find out. So that does leave it. Well, it's about an hour and 10 for sure. Yeah. So, but the rest of the movie, Chris, has that thrust to it. And again, like while I don't want to dismiss anything. And you made an excellent point when you said that was what the world was at the time, especially in this country. So we can be offended, but it's kind of weird unless the movie is advocating for stuff, which I don't think that's happening here at all. But like, I do think that the saving grace of all this is movies made in 76, there's a problem with it. Gator's an up and up guy. And Bama even tells him that he calls them the blacks, which thankfully that's as far as it gets. Right. But I never felt like anyone was being, made fun of or looked down on. It's just, he talks down to everybody if they owe him money. But he did make the comment to Gator here. It's something to the effect of, as I recall, you used to be okay with him or something, which a nice way of saying Gator's not racist like I am,
Yeah, it is to that effect. And that actually plays into White Lightning a bit as well, with some of Gator's backstory, not too heavily, but there is some of that in some of his friendships in White Lightning, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, granted, I haven't watched that movie in 2 or 3 years, but it does play into that a little bit. And yeah, they, like you said, it's clear pointing that Bama McCall is the terrible person, not Burt, not Gator. Gator's a good guy, other than being in prison for bootlegging moonshine, which is kind of in the South, bootlegging moonshine. Saying, yeah, lots of people do it. So it's not.
I was going to say you're there in Georgia, so
Yeah, man, that's how we learned to drive from Burt Reynolds here. So
I'm saying
it's just that and Dukes of Hazzard.
that and Dukes of Hazzard. Hard to deny that. By the way, his dad, John Stedman, as Ned McCluskey, and the girl that played his daughter, Lori Futch, she's got no Wikipedia. Doesn't mean she didn't keep acting, but it's interesting that there's nothing there. And the girl that we mentioned, the 15-year-old, she told him she's 15 and a half, is Stephanie Birchfield, who also doesn't have anything here. Again, doesn't mean they didn't continue acting. I just don't have it right there in front of me.
Yeah, I didn't find anything looking them up. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
That's true. So, and by the way, it's a really good cast. Like we've mentioned, Lauren Hunt went on to do a lot of stuff for sure and had a really, really good career. And we know, of course, about Burt and Jerry for sure. And we got to mention Jack Weston as Irving Greenfield. This is a very odd character to me because, like, he's kind of a schmuck. And you kind of get the feeling like, I don't think he's crooked per se, but, like you just kind of get the feeling this guy's made poor personal life choices in his time. Like, he's not exactly a great representative of the feds, right? But this guy had a heck of a career, man. He's no longer with us. He died in 96. But man, what a career this guy had. What did you think about him here? Like, he's definitely a character. I think he was better than I initially thought he was going to be when I first saw him. I actually thought he did very well in this movie.
So, I mean, he's your typical 1970s drunk, divorced Fed, right? And he plays the character perfectly. But he is I mean, he kind of made his career on playing that kind of character, like a midlife crisis alcoholic. Every time I look at him, I see Wait Until Dark, where he's just taking so much advantage of Audrey Hepburn, who's blind in that film. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but
I have not seen that.
It's worth the watch. But
wow,
yeah, he kind of always plays the same character in a lot of the stuff during this time period. But there's some comedic elements to his character in this movie that I didn't expect. And I wonder how much of that was Burt's directing, or he's like, I don't know, just do whatever you want.
It's fine. I don't care.
Oh, this is Burt's first time out as a director. I don't know how much direction he was giving to some of these actors or actresses.
Well, I wonder if he was an actor's director. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Like, I'll point you in the direction, but I'm just going to let you do your thing. By the way, Weston was in The Incredible Mr. Limpet in 64. So if you're a Don Knotts guy, he was George Stickle. I'm a Don Knotts guy. I can't help it. I was born and raised on Andy Griffith. Can't help that either. Don Knotts a freaking genius, man.
I don't know that I've ever seen that. I'll have to put that on my list as we talk. I take notes on flicks that we either talk about that I haven't seen in a long time, or things that you mentioned that I haven't seen. So I'll put that one onto the top of the list to check out.
Yeah, I've seen that movie so many times. It's a really goofy film, but it's good too. It's like one of the first things I think, I can't say first because Disney was doing stuff, so that's not fair. But it's a mix of animation and live action for 64. So yeah.
Yeah, and who could forget about his breakout role in Short Circuit in 1988?
Yeah, well,
I'm kidding. Short Circuit 2.
Short Circuit 2. And Ishtar in 87. There's a star-making performance, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Freaking Ishtar, man. There's something to never do here on the show. You know, it's funny, like it's hailed as one of the worst films of all time. And like really, really bad, like, but I've never seen it. The budget for that movie was $51 million. It made $14 million, which, you know, we've covered films here before that didn't make any money, but yikes.
Gosh, he was in Rad. You ever seen Rad?
I don't think I've seen Rad. That was 86. Look at that poster. Oh my God.
It is a movie. It is terrible. It's kind of one of the first forays into like, hey, kids are into this. We need to make a movie about this extreme sport that kids are into. So it's literally a movie about BMX racing, but not with the 90s flair that we used to do those kind of things with. It's like very cheesy 80s movie about BMX racing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he was in, let's see, The Four Seasons, Carol Burnett and Alan Alda. Legends right there for sure. The guy's a very good actor, man. I'm just going to be straight. Like, I think he was really good here. And, you know, I think the character could have been maybe forgettable, but I think he did enough. I think he's a funny guy. And, you know, he wasn't supposed to be funny, but when he does the double takes and the way he reacts to situations and he no-sells stuff, it's very funny stuff, man.
His portrayal as a drunk detective in this is pretty great. Like,
yeah,
there's a couple scenes there where he's really hitting the bottle hard, and some things are unfolding around him, and he's like, "Oh wow, I've put myself in a bad situation being drunk here."
Yeah.
But yeah, he is basically, his task throughout this film is to follow Bama to follow Gator to get information on Bama. So he's kind of the in-between guy more than, you know, a big, his role is perfect in this film as far as what it needs to accomplish, I think. And his acting fits it well.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
If you would have put like a serious FBI agent in here, you know, I don't know that it works as well. The entire film. I don't know that you got to have kind of someone that the feds sent down to deal with people named Gator and Bama. They couldn't put him on any of the Godfather mob cases happening during the fictional film time period we're living in. You got to go deal with the moonshiners and opium dealers.
I was just going to say, we've also got to talk about the fact to the point of what this guy was. Where were all the feds? I don't recall us ever seeing. Like, Burt was on the phone and we never saw who he was talking to. He's like, kept sending him, you got to get here. It's got to get us now. You know, like, I'm about to do the thing. You got to get here now. And we assume they all showed up in helicopters and SWAT and everything, but we never really saw anybody.
Yeah, no. As far as I know, they never get there. That's what I was saying, is like, they were all busy working RICO cases, whether they were in New York or Miami, I guess. This guy was about to get busted down to a desk job, and they were like, we'll give him one last mission, send him out there to look after Gator.
You just imagine the guys on the other side of that phone call with Burt. It's like, well, at Greenfield went and got himself killed. Oh, crap. I guess we're going to have to go bail it out again. Here we go. Just send a handful of guys. It'll be fine. Yeah. Well, speaking of cast, Mike Douglas, of all people, is the governor. If you're the era before me, then you know who the freak Mike Douglas is, man. well-known television personality, and he's not here in very, very much of the film, but like kind of has a problem with Jewish people, I'd say, as he led us to believe in the opening of this film, but he's not a great dude. It seems like the people in power in this film, Chris, are not the greatest people ever.
No, and he's kind of, I mean, they tie him into being kind of friendly with Bama, so you have to expect they're, I mean, it's like when the mobsters show up in The Jerk and they're like, we want to do this property deal so we can move out the blacks and the Jews.
Yep.
It's kind of what they're alluding to in this film without directly saying it, with how the governor is perceiving it and some of the comments that Bama McCall's character makes as far as gentrifying for profit, which is a thing that happened in the 70s once again.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And by the way, this guy, speaking of Douglas, well-known TV personality, I can't say this for sure, but in my head, I'm imagining a conversation where Burt just calls him up and says, "Hey, you want to do this movie I'm directing? Come on over." You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like it was very formal to me at all.
Hey, I got some money. Would you like to make some?
Yeah,
sure.
By the way, we have to very, very quickly shout out Norm Macdonald's impression of Burt Reynolds, which is effing fantastic. The late great Norm Macdonald, man.
Yeah, rest in peace, Norm. That's one of my wife's favorite comedians.
Oh, I love that guy. I can't say that I ever realized I'm watching the movie again now. He's got a belt buckle that says Gator on it.
Yeah. Because he has to have a belt buckle in all of these 70 flicks. He has he has another one in Bandit that's like massive rodeo belt buckle.
It's true. The big hat. He's got to have the big hat. Yeah, no hat here. No hat. He's the hatless bandit.
He had more hair here than towards the later part of the 70s, where the hat was maybe covering up a little bit there.
It seems like he was one of the first actors next to Connery and a couple other guys that started wearing a toupee, but like they had done everything they could to keep it quiet because they didn't want people knowing about it. But like, unless I'm getting that wrong, it seems like those were not the first two, but among the most famous of the guys that actually started doing it. So also, we got to talk about Dub Taylor as Mayor Caffrey. If your name's Dub Taylor, that's a pretty good name, dude. I'm sorry. It is. I love that name, Dub Taylor.
It's almost like the writer sat down and created all of the names first, and then was like, okay, now it's time to write the script.
Yeah. We got names first. Wouldn't it be cool if this guy's name was Dub? Well, look, Dub Taylor's the actor. He played Mayor Caffrey. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, sorry.
Well, no. Look, you could have very well been right, because this is Gator and Bama, for God's sake. But they just got an actor to match the hokiness of the names. Walter Clarence Dub Taylor Jr. That's a lot of names. Man, we lost him in '94. This guy, holy cow, the stuff that he has. I mean, he's got a lot of stuff in Westerns, of course. He started acting in 1938, but he was also in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which I'm a big Jimmy Stewart guy. Let's see. God, the amount of Westerns this guy was in. He was in Dragnet, A Star is Born. He was in The Fastest Gun Alive. Trying to find the ones that kind of jump out at me here. The Cincinnati Kid. It jumps out at me for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. Oh, another Don Knotts film. This guy was in The Shakiest Gun in the West. Man, Don Knotts he's the Kevin Bacon of this podcast here, because he's tying everybody together.
Except Jerry Reed.
Talk
about a funny conversation those two would have together.
Well, you know what? He does tie them together, I'll bet you, because of through Andy Griffith. I'll bet you he does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I bet if we jump on YouTube right now, there's some bluegrass festival where Jerry Reed and Andy Griffith are playing a song together.
I'm just saying, I would not be surprised.
He continued acting almost to the point of his unfortunate passing here.
He did.
He did something. He did Law and Order in '94. So that's, yeah, this is one of those careers where you look back at it and you're like, they were in a lot, like constantly acting. In Cannonball Run too, he's the shit.
Yes.
Which we'll
Soggy
get there
Bottom
eventually.
Hey, I have memories of Soggy Bottom USA, by the way. They're not vivid, but I got them.
I don't know that if I remember seeing that, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. It's one of those.
I've got nothing. Not very vivid. In TV roles, he was on the Andy Griffith Show. There we go. He was there. Partridge Family, Emergency, Little House on the Prairie, Hazel, the Andy Griffith Show again, The Wild Wild West, The Monkees, Bonanza, Gunsmoke. Good Lord, dude. Twilight Zone. Yeah. Designing Women, 1989. Yeah, he worked quite a bit, for sure. Plus, it's that time period, Chris, where like a lot of the guys that as a kid you're seeing in the black and white movies and westerns and stuff, and like they're all kind of, again, they're all just acting. They're all working actors. So eventually going to be crossing paths in movies and TV and whatnot.
It's kind of crazy. Like the Western thing carried over even to the 90s. Like he's just a saloon old timer #1 in Back to the Future Part 3, the famous Western Back to the Future. But I mean, I guess if, you probably just call, what do you do? You make the casting call. You're like, hey, anyone that's ever worked in a Western, we're doing that for this new Back to the Future movie.
That's probably what happened. What else do? You know what I mean? You don't just go cast a bunch of unknown people to play cowboys. You go get the real thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Burt and Gilliam as Smiley. Buddy, we did Blazing Saddles here on the 6M. And if you know Blazing Saddles, you know Burt and Gilliam. Why don't you do a song? A real song. Like the Camptown Ladies. Great. The Camptown Ladies. Yeah, Then he starts singing it. I love this guy so much, man.
I love that film. And he was great here. And Smiley's kind of a smaller role in this movie, but he kind of shines when he's on screen.
He's still with us as we record this. He is 86. Good for him. And he's walking around wearing that red shirt, the black vest, and the black hat at these cons. That's awesome.
Now, that would be an autograph worth standing in line for, because it wouldn't cost you like $600 probably.
Yeah, dude, look. Yeah, in a heartbeat, I'd be in line for this guy. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Let's see. Gator. And again, into the later years, Alice, Charlie's Angels, the A-Team, the Dukes of Hazzard movie, and the Fall Guy. And let's see, actually, it was probably Dukes of Hazzard. Yep, that was the show. My apologies. I'm trying to forget that movie. Good Lord.
Ugh, with Sean Willem Scott and God.
Yeah, exactly. Who was the other guy?
Johnny Knoxville, right?
Johnny freaking Knoxville. Oh, my God.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Honeymoon in Vegas, by the way.
They did one thing right in that movie.
Oh, no. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, I agree with that.
Jessica Simpson was Daisy Duke at the height of Jessica Simpson.
I'm just saying. Them trying to pass her off as a country bumpkin was a little bit of a stretch, but no one really cared, did they? For obvious reasons.
Yeah, they didn't really play too much into the Daisy Duke character that they did in the show. She did not have as much of importance in what was going on with them, their Duke boys.
And I'm sorry, but nothing beats Catherine Bach in her prime. I'm sorry. Like, holy Lord. The real Daisy Duke. Honeymoon in Vegas, man. That freaking movie with Nick Cage, Sarah Jessica Parker, where he's telling him he's in that airplane. He's like, we're the Flying Elvises, Utah chapter. And they've all got lit up Elvis suits and jumping out of the plane. It's the funniest thing ever, man. Oh, my God. The Flying Elvises, man. This guy did a bunch of stuff too, man. Holy Lord.
Yeah, I wonder. So I know it happens with some actors now, but you don't really see that as much, right? I think people are more pick and choose than they used to be. It seems like actors would just, it's like, okay, it's a job, and they just took it back in the day, and you don't see that as much now.
I mean, honestly, I think you're right. I think I just mentioned Nick Cage. Talk about a working actor's actor. He just wants to act. That's why he kept going all these years. He's just like, yeah, I mean, you respect it, but again, like you said, no one really does that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it here and there, but it almost seems more like I wonder if some of that plays into studio contracts and the way that like contracts used to be written for actors back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
versus how things happen now. But like if you think about who's the main actress in Wizard of Oz? Why am I Judy Garland,
Judy
right?
Garland,
And,
yeah.
and like what those studio contracts and stuff look like for her. I wonder how much of that plays into it versus today.
That's a good call, man. I mean, Hollywood's changed so much, dude. That's part of it too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we did spend 20 minutes before recording this on whether or not this movie was funded by the mob, since we couldn't find we couldn't find exact budget information.
By the way, since we did that off mic, share here what you know about this. And I mean, I'm not saying here's Chris's expert opinion. I'm just saying you've looked into this, I guess, or have heard things. What do you know about what happened there?
So, in some instances, what the mob would do to launder money is they would, instead of going through their normal stints, they would make like porn films or B-rated horror films. So, in one instance, the Colombo family, this is probably the most famous instance, the Colombo family, they backed the movie Deep Throat. And then the profits of that film actually backed Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, for like the longest time, no one knew how much money Texas Chainsaw Massacre actually made.
Hmm.
It turned out it actually made more money than Halloween after the Colombo family went under a RICO case and some bookkeeping got got undiscovered. So there's tons of articles about that, and it is a really unique time period in the 70s of how some films were getting made. And if you're a big fan of horror flicks, most of those things were shown at either drive-ins or basically rated X theaters, porn theaters.
Mm-hmm.
If you lived in a major city like Atlanta, we had tons of them in the 70s. But yeah, so like the mob would back to probably a lot more horror films than people know, and things like Death Wish and those kind of gritty rated R action flicks. So yeah, they would use Hollywood to launder money, take a gamble, fund very low budget films that they knew they would become drive-in flicks that they would make their money back on, and then possibly more. So something like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with such the low budget it had, they probably quadrupled their money on
Right.
investment while laundering, because all of that money was going to the production of the film. So it was tied up in other things, tied up in other legitimate ventures, not necessarily the crime organization section of drugs and prostitution and illegal gambling, et cetera, et cetera. But it is there's tons of books written about it. But like I said, probably the one that I know the best is the story of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how that got made, and how some of the actors didn't necessarily get paid, and Toby Hooper getting 10% of the profits as opposed to getting paid while directing the film. There's some weird stuff around that.
Mm.
But anytime we come across like a 70s film where you can't find exact budget information, or it seems to change a lot, it kind of makes you wonder how the film was actually backed.
Sure.
We looked into some of the producers who all seemed like they worked on The Rifleman, but that doesn't necessarily, that would also be part of that, is you're not going to tie it directly to the Colombo family. You would be paying those producers the money, and then they would be producing the film with whatever shaving off the top. So yeah, that was the offline conversation we were having as we scrambled to figure out how much money this movie actually cost to make.
I don't know that I've ever run into a situation where I couldn't find the budget. Honestly, it's something new.
I mean, we threw it through ChatGPT, and it was like, here's 6 different references. It's somewhere in between this and this. So
it's like, yeah, well, we're not sure. Here's what we think. Good luck.
And that was after us doing our due diligence on site, a few different sites. You went to the AFI page, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So,
by the way, one cast member we have neglected to mention, Alice Ghostly as Emmeline Kavanaugh, the cat lady. This is such a random, not the actress is random. She was a working actress who's very familiar. If you've watched if you've ever watched any TV that came out of the 70s, 80s, or 90s, you'll know this lady's face, right? But like the character's so random. I just can't get my head around why we suddenly stuck a cat lady in here who made Gator and this reporter take these cats into this place to get the files on Bama. It's such a random thing, you know?
But it's hilarious.
No, well, yeah, but still.
I mean, that's the answer, right? It's because it was funny. They're having to sneak through this hospital while Gator is getting clawed to death by these cats. It's I'd kind of forgotten about that scene until you just brought it back up.
That's fun. Yeah, I don't get it. But she's so Alice Ghostley had a career in stage, TV, and film. And her TV credits, there's a bunch. The classic old time shows, Car 54, Where Are You? Bewitched.
Are you looking at Cornelia okay. Because there is a Cornelia the hat check lady, which I'm like, that's a they have no role. Okay, yes, this is the character. Okay. I got confused there for a second. I was like, wait, what are we talking about?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff that she did through the years. But again, she just got a very recognizable face, man, you know?
Yeah, she was Sabrina the Teenage Witch great grandma, apparently.
That's right. She was in Grease, The Odd Couple 2, Addams Family Reunion in 98. She was in To Kill a Mockingbird in 62. Wow. She was in The Graduate. Man, big time movies. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of TV stuff, man. A lot of those Golden Girls, Punky Brewster, Simon and Simon, Designing Women, Highway to Heaven, Tales from the Dark Side, Trapper John M.D. Oh my God, this is like old school for me, man.
Chico and the Man.
Chico and the Man. One Day at a Time, Chips. What's happening, dude? I'm gonna tell you right now, if you don't like what's happening, there's something wrong with you. Rerun. Are you kidding me? Yeah, man.
Maybe that'll be a whole episode where we just watch the episodes of Alice Ghostley and all of these 1970 shows.
She was everywhere, man. Talk about a working actor. My goodness, she definitely, my God, at the role she has.
It's kind of funny that she was in Gator and then later was in the TV series Cobra. Because Cobra is the Sylvester Stallone flick from the 80s. I could see some relation between those two films.
I can see that.
As far as what they are.
Yeah, we actually lost this lady in 2007. So she's no longer with us. But yeah.
We could start at Leave It to Beaver and go all the way through. Wow.
I remember her stuff on Bewitched for some reason, but I can't remember what character she played. Wasn't she like a neighbor or something, if I'm getting that right? I don't remember.
I don't know that much about Bewitched, so I'm not the guy to ask on that one. I do want to know what Love American Style the TV series is, though, because I thought that was going to be something way different.
Yeah, it wasn't like that at all. Yeah. Man, that was way back.
1969 to 1973.
Well, it ended before I was born. Well, it ended the year I was born. How about that? So, talk about dating myself. But, you know, stuff goes into reruns. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. You know, by the way, talking about how people remember Burt Reynolds, I mean, yes, certain generations will remember him from other things. Some people remember him from Evening Shade. Did you ever get into Evening Shade, by the way?
I did not. It sounds like a soap opera.
It was a sitcom. And I don't know if this is the case now, but at the time I remember that they could not put the show into syndication, like into reruns, because I don't want to say it wrong if my memory could be wonky on this, but something like they had just made enough episodes to where, because you have to make so many before it'll get put into reruns, like for syndication.
So that happened with Grace Under Fire, because she quit the show midway through what was the last season. So they only got to 93 episodes. So you have to hit the 100 episodes was used to be the golden number.
Oh, well, there you go. You do know about that.
That has changed. The only reason I know that that's a thing is because I watched a what is it? One of the dark sides of comedy, and
Mm-hmm.
the star of Grace Under Fire. Famously, she kind of left acting. She had like a mental break during the filming of that show, and it's unfortunate for everyone else that worked on that show, because it means that they didn't get any of the residuals for that when it went, because it never really went into syndication. Whereas they pretty much would have been paid for life if it would have went into syndication during that time period. So it's kind of a really sad story, because they got to like 92 or 93 episodes. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming it's a similar kind of thing.
Oh, it was. Even get this. 1990 to 94, 98 episodes.
Yeah.
Crazy. I watched that show as a kid, man. I say as a kid, but I wasn't a kid really. I watched it. It was funny, man.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of it, honestly. I'm just kind of going back through and looking at credits for Gator, or for yeah, I'm just gonna call Burt Gator from now on. Burt Reynolds, because like he started doing voiceovers, and I remember like he famously he did a voice in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and I was trying to remember what character it was. Since I had already made the tie-in to Jerry Reed in Grand Theft Auto, I thought, while we were talking about tie-ins, thought I would try to hunt that down here.
Sure.
Yeah, so he plays Avery Carrington in that as a voice actor. Remember when video games used to hire like famous actors to be in there?
Oh yeah, man. That was a trend. That happened for a while, I think. That Evening Shade show, by the way, had Mary Lou Henner. I used to have such a thing for Mary Lou Henner. Mary Lou Henner at any given time was the prettiest woman I'd ever seen in my life. Like, I thought she was incredibly hot. I'm just saying, man. Like, I really, really did.
Oh,
So I thought the same thing about Carrie Fisher too, because I was definitely a Princess Leia kid, man. Love me some Carrie Fisher.
I was a Princess Leia kid too, but by the time I was a Princess Leia kid, it was 1995.
Ah, well, there you go. And talk about how things were and how Hollywood was, and I'm sure it still is to a point. Like her feeling the pressure to not be fat and having to, keep her body in such incredible shape because they had her practically naked in Jedi. Stuff that, women
Yeah.
are held to a different standard than men. Who would have thunk it here in America?
Well, I mean, they're not going to cast me as Bandit, to be fair.
Well, that's fair too. I don't know. You're quite charming, and you got the hair. I mean, it's a lot.
Might cast me as Snowman. I don't know about Bandit.
I'm nobody. You know who I'd be? I'd be like the trucker, or I'd be like a crooked cop or something. That's what I'd be. I wouldn't be anybody. I wouldn't even be in the top cast.
Oh man.
I'd be unnamed deputy number 3 or something.
I would be like deleted scene, the guy that shows up to the liquor store after they've stole all the Coors and just left a note.
Yes. Cutting room floor, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Well, look, that in the grand scheme of things, where does Gator rank for you personally? Does this rank above Bandit? Does nothing rank above Bandit? Where is it for you?
For Reynolds films?
Yes.
I mean, I guess it's got to go like Deliverance, Smokey and the Bandit, White Lightning, and then probably Gator. I love Gator. Gator is more of a fun film, but White Lightning is kind of its own special treasure trove of. It's such an unexpected film, as far as how gritty it actually is, considering it's Burt Reynolds and Ned Beatty. It's kind of like a follow up to Deliverance. It's great. We may not ever get around to talking about that one, so it's definitely worth the watch. But Gator is fun in itself. If you're more of a fan of like Smokey and the Bandit than Deliverance, or more serious Burt stuff, this would probably fall in your list kind of below Smokey and the Bandit. It's above all the other Smokey and the Bandits, though, to be fair.
Oh, it's so far above the other Smokey and the Bandits. Yeah. Again, like, I don't know. There's something to be said that we don't have a plan. We just want to make money off the first one. Just leave the first one alone. The first one's a freaking classic. We don't need to have any more. Oy vey. Let's have I got an idea. Let's have an elephant. Let's put the elephant in the back of the truck.
Oh, and I have to say, I guess I would throw Cannonball Run might actually be at the top of that list. I kind of forgot.
Cannonball Run. Holy God.
Like Cannonball Run is such a big cast of characters too. Like that, it's kind of its own thing.
Mm-hmm. Cannonball Run is like, again, something I grew up with. A lot of these movies we're talking about, TV shows we're talking about, I grew up watching. This stuff was on in my house all the time. And, just as people who grew up in their own era think that nothing will match their era of whatever they're watching, like, I don't think anything matches the stuff I grew up with. I mean, that's me. Other people would have differing opinions based on when they're born and raised too. So
there's also kind of the coolness of Cannonball Run being based on a real life event, and like that, the ambulance itself, it was part of the Cannonball Run, the real life Cannonball Run. And then Dom DeLuise and Burt Reynolds together, their chemistry's insane,
off the charts.
How funny it is. That's one that we talked about wanting to do a watch along for, but it is still really hard to find in streaming. So I'm almost certain that I'm going to have to hunt us down some physical copies and get those sent or something so that we can all enjoy that.
Yeah, you can eBay it. They'll probably be like $400 a copy or something because people take advantage of that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I want it because that movie has so many actors tied to it. I wonder if that's more of the problem. But
yeah. Well, that's an excellent point. And like, I think a lot of it has to do with who was the studio that put it out, like you said, and like who owns it now. That's always the key, is that who owns it now. Because we had done Dogma on the 6M, and Kevin Smith is just now getting the rights back to that film, but it took this long because they were under lockdown this entire time.
Yeah. So, anyone can go watch Cannonball Run 2 right now. It's free on Tubi, so you can take your love of Gator and White Lightning. You could have yourself a little marathon there, but you will be skipping Cannonball Run 1, which is still not streaming anywhere.
Well, I've got a link for you, and it's maybe not, hey, this is legal, but I do have a link for you, and I'll share it with you.
It's just more annoying than anything else, because it's like I don't mind paying. I wouldn't even mind buying it, like on a streaming platform. But there's a whole, the whole reason I have so much physical media that I have stopped buying physical media because I just don't have anywhere to store it.
Yeah, same.
So when we do the wrestling podcast and I'm on the stream, the backdrop is like 200 VHSs. So I have that and more on DVD. Like I'm just out of places. So if it's not something that I own currently, it's it's kind of, I don't think that I'm going to buy a physical copy of anything anymore. I literally don't have the space for it.
Dude, I used to buy every Marvel film that was released because I'm like, I want physical copies of all the Marvel films. And I stopped with, I'll never remember now. It might have been the second Spider-Man that I stopped. And I only stopped because I can stream this stuff now. But like, I may regret that one of these days because you never know what could happen to these streamers, man. Like they could just, anytime they want to shut down, they could shut down and you're out of luck.
Yeah, it's that, but there's something to be said about buying a physical media because you get extra features, and a lot of people put a lot of effort into that. The other thing is when you buy something through an Amazon or any of these streaming platforms that actually let you purchase a film, whether it's Apple or, you don't really own it. You own the streaming rights as long as it's on that platform. If they ever have to remove it for some reason, you're just out $4 or whatever you paid for it. So yeah, it's kind of, I get why people would want to do that. If that starts becoming a thing, then I will just go back to pirating, and that's on them because like I said, I have no problem with paying for something if it's there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're going to make it a nightmare for me to purchase to begin with, you kind of get what you get, and you can't pitch fit, as a kindergarten teacher would say.
Oh, dude, first time I heard that, my kid had come home from school and he said it. I'm like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to use that from now on. Well, kids, there you have it. I believe there is our review of Gator. And by the way, The third movie in this franchise is what now? Because I can't remember.
I don't know that there's canonically a third film.
Okay.
I'll look that up real quick. I know White Lightning and Gator are considered to be back to back, and they're a sequel. I don't know that there wasn't a third film, but I don't think Burt Reynolds is involved in it.
Oh, interesting. That's weird.
If there is. So as far as I know, whenever you purchase this, because I actually do own this one on DVD, it's those two flicks packaged together. So if you get the Gator collection, you're getting, White Lightning and Gator.
For some reason, I was thinking there was a third one, but I guess maybe there's not.
I mean, technically, there's Smokey and the Bandit.
Are we still maintaining that he is? Who is this character in a Bandit? Was it Danville?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know anything else about the Bandit. We don't know Bandit's backstory. We just know he's a man. He is a man that can get liquor from one place to another very fast, which plays into Gator from White Lightning.
Very true. Yeah. Well, hey, it's just another one of those weird fan theories, I suppose.
There's way worse fan theories out there than
that's Gator. Fair, yeah. Yeah. Maybe Bandit Darville, Bo Bandit Darville, or Bobby Gator McCluskey. I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe relocation program after he shut down Bam McCall for the feds.
Well, hey, maybe his dad and his daughter are living somewhere being protected by the FBI while he's out with his best buddy Snowman, who looks suspiciously like his former best friend that he had to kill. Or good friend that he had to kill.
Maybe it's his twin.
It's his twin.
We don't know a lot about the Snowman either, other than he's married and his wife is mad. He's hanging out with the Bandit again.
Well, she's mad because the Bandit's bad news because he used to run moonshine up in that boat that can go really fast. Like that. By the way, we grazed all completely over that freaking chase scene at the beginning of this movie. Like those boats out in the swamp and whatnot.
Yeah. So the entire film kind of, after he gets out of jail, there's like 5 minutes of, hey, here's his family, because they have to set up why he would work for the feds, essentially. And it just ends up being this giant boat chase.
Yep.
Which there's tons of chases in all of the other Burt Reynolds films, including Smokey and the Bandit, but this is the only one that I know of that is boats. So if you're into a good boat chase through the Okefenokee swamp, this is the flick for you.
Nothing like a boat chase, am I right? If you really want to think about it. Gotta make
I can't really think of I can't really think of another one.
There's not enough, in my opinion. Boat chases in the Bayou. The Bayou Boat Chase. New reality show.
I mean, this is a movie that you could, if you're going to remake movies, you could do a lot worse than doing a reboot of Gator. I think the atmosphere of it, you could make it more modern. I think you could do something really cool with it.
I agree with that.
Get like a Ryan Gosling as a lead.
Oh, I forgot about that guy. Well, look, if we're going to let Gosling recreate stuff that's already been created, for God's sake, let's get a better story and a better plot, because The Fall Guy is not a good movie. Okay.
I have not seen it yet.
Just don't. Because I didn't compare it at all to the Fall Guy TV show that I grew up watching, because there's not a lot of comparison. But you ain't got to worry about that, because it doesn't matter. Nothing works because the movie's that freaking bad. Like, oh, it's so bad. They play that one Kiss song, I Was Made for Loving You, their disco hit.
Yeah. It's got an awesome guitar solo in that song.
Well, let me tell you something. You won't think so after the 37th time of listening to it in that freaking movie.
How many times did they? Why?
Brother, they just kept playing it. At some point, I'm like, all right, that's enough. Like, they're counting on this music to carry through the bad dialogue and a ridiculous plot and a dumb story. No, it ain't happening.
Well, that's unfortunate. I really actually like that as far as the disco era of Kiss, or the releasing individual albums per band member era of Kiss. That is one of the songs that stands out. Yeah,
don't even get me started. Ace is my favorite Kiss band member of all time. I thought Ace's album was great.
Which Ace?
No.
I'm kidding.
See, that's how you start fights with people. I'm not talking about the star man. I'm talking about Ace, By God, freely, man.
Hey, Peter Chris is pretty good.
Peter Chris is a good drummer for sure.
Yeah. I don't want to hear that song 40 times though. The song is only like 2 minutes and 40 seconds long to begin with.
Well, I don't know how much they paid for it, but they got their money out of it because they just kept freaking playing it, man.
Being that it's Kiss, they probably paid a lot for it, would be my guess. So I guess
I would say nothing cheap. Not with Gene Simmons. Ain't nothing cheap.
Ask WCW.
Yeah, they'll tell you. They'll tell you. Well, kids, there you have it. There's Gator. There's our review of the movie, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And it's the second time of us talking about Burt here on the show. Probably won't be the last. We're going to do Cannonball Run. It's coming. So buckle up for that. But Chris, before we get out of here, let's get your last word on Gator.
Fun film. Loved it growing up. Still love it now. It's I would recommend everyone give it a watch. I think it will surprise a lot of people, especially Jerry Reed playing just an absolute terrible villain, in a villain that you kind of want to like, which is a terrible thing to say considering the crimes that he is committing. But his charm and Burt's charm, it bounces off the screen really, really hard. It's a really fun film. If you watch Gator and like it and aren't super sensitive, I would also say check out White Lightning. And by sensitive, I mean like to violence and more of like a gritty, like I said, it does feel more like Deliverance than Gator is more of like an action comedy as described. So they're two completely different movies. I recommend both, but White Lightning might not be for everybody. White Lightning is my favorite of the two films, but Gator is a whole lot of fun. If you're a Smokey and the Bandit fan or a Burt Reynolds fan, it is a must watch.
I mean, if you talk about famous combos like John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, we talked about, Clooney and Brad Pitt. There's other guys we can talk about. Let's see, Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, but also for me, Burt Reynolds and Jerry Reed, man, like duos that just worked. They just clicked. They just had natural charisma individually and together. Great the way they bounced off each other, and great comic timing, and everything just works. Like I don't know. Like I don't know that we see that a whole lot, but man, it's clearly evident in this movie. And like Chris said, it's this is worth a watch for sure. And like I said before, folks, there will be more to come. We will do Cannonball Run. I think didn't they make 3 Cannonball Runs? Am I right?
Yes, but it's one of those things where I don't know if Burt Reynolds is in all 3.
I don't think he is.
I know that he's in he's in the first 2 for sure, and Dom DeLuise is in the first and second one.
Yeah.
If we do those, we need to do Rat Race as well because they're very similar, and Rat Race is hilarious. The original, not the remake from the 2000s.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen the remake, I believe.
The remake's not bad. It's got Mr. Bean in it.
Mm-hmm.
Cuba Gooding Jr.'s in it. Whoopi Goldberg.
That's right. That's right. That's where I'm coming back to me now.
It's a pretty big cast for the remake's not bad, but yeah, it's not as good as the original.
Well, there you have it, kids. There's Gator in the books for you. And thanks as always for hanging out with us, and hope you enjoyed the show. Keep your eyes open for more, because there will be more, I promise you. And I like to go down the stuff, again, as I talked about earlier, that I kind of grew up with. And hopefully if you're of that area, you appreciate it, that era, I should say. And if you're not, hopefully you'll go give these movies a chance, because I think you'll enjoy them. More to come as always. But for now, that is Gator. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.